Ms Atkins, the Shadow Secretary of State for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. Very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Do you support the farmers with their ongoing protests?
Yes, because this is critical to not just their livelihoods, but of course their ability to feed us as a nation. So whether we live in a city or in the countryside, we need British farmers to continue to grow food to feed us. And if family farms are broken in the way that we fear they will be as a direct result of this policy, then we will all see the impact in terms of higher food prices, lower food security, and of course the damage to our countryside that we all care so much about.
I mean, clearly this isn't the first protest. Protests have obviously remained very respectful so far. Do the farmers need to take it up again because the government's not showing any signs of changing direction?
I'm afraid the government asked farmers to go and get advice. They have got that advice, and the advice from professionals is that the ministers have got their figures wrong. And so we're hoping with this latest rally, whereby some of our older farming generations are coming to Westminster. They're leaving their farms. They prefer not to, but they're going to do so, to show the inhumane aspects of this policy, as well as the longer-term economic impact. And I very much hope that given the incredibly volatile circumstances in which the world finds itself now, that the Prime Minister will look again at this policy, because we've talked a lot about national security, but of course part of national security is not just defence spending, important though that is, it's also food security, energy security and industrial security. If this government breaks up family farms, as is happening with this policy, then that means food security is damaged, but also energy policy. We've just seen this week, Labour ministers have approved a massive solar farm in Yorkshire that is taking up prime agricultural land that could help to produce food, and instead they're putting a solar farm on it. That sort of incongruity of policy and inconsistency of policy making, I'm afraid, has to be ironed out given the times we're in.
But just to clarify on this, I can understand there's arguments on both sides about introducing inheritance tax at a half rate, 20% rather than 40% on family farms. You can't be arguing seriously that it's a matter for national security.
Yeah. Sorry, it's not just me that says that. The current Secretary of State for the Environment has said that food security is national security. Because if we as a nation are not able to feed ourselves, as we saw, sadly, only 3 years ago when Russia invaded Ukraine, we now know, as an international community, just how important Ukraine has been in terms of fertiliser production, but also in terms of wheat production. And your viewers will remember only too well the massive impact that the war in Ukraine had on food prices in particular, inflation more generally, but food prices in particular. And again, we're seeing these fluctuations in fertiliser prices. In fairness, Sky News did an analysis of this only last week. And this is why it comes back again to the fact, this is not a tax loophole, as Rachel Reeves has described it. It is deliberate tax policy to protect not just family farms, but also family businesses, and to protect that entrepreneurship that they show, but also to protect our food production. And this undermines their very laudable aim, which we share, to ensure that we're on a good footing with this in these volatile times. Food security is a critical part of that.
I mean, volatile prices is a different point, as we experience with high inflation, than the national security per se, which feels like quite a leap. But let's move on specifically to...
It has to be seen, sorry to interrupt, it genuinely as part of the same conversation, because if we're not able to feed our nation, if we have supermarket shelves that are empty, believe you me, the public will very quickly take issue with that.
Doesn't mean the same conclusion, though, per se. Let's talk about national security. Can the UK rely on the United States under Donald Trump, given what he announced last night?
We support the government with its efforts to not only keep dialogue open, but keep a meaningful dialogue open with the United States. Let's not forget, over many, many decades, we have enjoyed a very close and strong partnership with the United States. But this, President Trump's approach to Ukraine and wanting to get a deal to bring war to an end in this part of the European continent is no surprise. And indeed, we all share that laudable aim to want to bring peace to Ukraine and bring a stop to this war. And so whilst we, of course, support the government in ensuring that it continues to talk to the United States, keeps working with the United States, equally, we do support the Prime Minister's efforts now to bring European allies not just to the table, but actually doing things that they should have been doing arguably some time ago to ensure that we are playing our part across Europe to help Ukraine and to ensure that we have the military might to do so.
Has President Trump fallen for Russian propaganda, Russian arguments?
Well, I'm not, if you'll forgive me, I'm going to resist commenting on that. But what I would emphasise is that in all of this conversation, we must never lose sight of the fact that it is Putin who invaded Ukraine, Putin who continues to fly drone strikes into Ukraine whilst all these international conversations are happening over the last few days, and it is Ukrainian people that are paying a very, very terrible price for this.
Victoria Atkins, thanks so much for joining us. Forgive me, we're going to pivot